This is a Podfire production.
Hi, I'm Ryan and welcome to the Neuronirvana podcast, where we dive into everything to do with mental health and well-being. Anything that can improve your life, we're here to talk about. All right, welcome to this week's episode of Neuronirvana. This week we have Donna-Leigh Perfect with us. I met Donna at an event, actually. We shared the stage at a domestic violence event. So pretty cool way to meet her. And then since then, we've developed a good friendship. So Donna is an international speaker, also author. A great book here called Perfectly Bullied, Perfectly at Peace with Donna-Leigh Perfect. Another children's book, Tiger, and Puppy Rescue. So if you want to check them out. And also at the back of these books, there's a great app, I do believe.
Yeah.
Yep. So tell us a bit about this app.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, the books themselves were quite interesting how they all came about because the children's books are The Adventures of Jessie and Rocky Rockstar, actually about my daughter and our rescue dog, and he actually came from a foster home. And so there's a lot of synergy there, Ryan, with our rescue dog and my life coming from foster homes as well. And these books were kind of channeled to me. I never, ever planned to be a children's author. In fact, I never really planned to be an author, full stop. And one day these books just came to me, actually via a challenge of a friend that was working with a comedian, and they were going to write a book together and kind of check in with each other to make sure that they were doing what they were supposed to be doing, which was a chapter a week. And then that friend said to me, "Would you like to be in on this challenge?" And I went, "Okay, why not?" Yep. And before long, within 48 hours, these children's books came down and were just kind of downloaded onto me. And I thought it would be a nice way to get a message across to children about a rescue dog pretty much sharing life lessons of compassion and kindness to them. So a bit of a role reversal. Instead of the child teaching the dog, it was the other way around. And I thought that was a cool message to get to children. And so in the back of the books, I've developed a free community life-saving app. So when you purchase these books, there's a QR code in the back, and you can download this app for free. And it has 13 life-saving support services on. So we're talking about Lifeline, Kids Helpline, Paradise Kids, which is a grief and loss program for children. Yep. Rosie's, if you're homeless and you need a feed. There's also a men's line for men that need to talk. There's a domestic violence, the 1-800-RESPECT. So there's a number, also cyberbullying. There's Safety Commissioner if kids are getting bullied online.
Yeah, cool.
So it's a one-stop kind of shop in one app where people can go to those sites and get lots of information on the service that's being offered, and then reach out to that service if they want further support and help.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really awesome. So plenty of resources, I suppose, you can draw from. And a big thing that at Neuronirvana we're all about mental health, and so yeah, this is definitely a great resource for anyone that's going through or a whole lot of wide range of issues. So yeah, that's really, really cool, Donna. So yeah, obviously I've known you for a while and I know your story, and you've got a very, very powerful story. So let's dive into who is Donna-Leigh Perfect and what has brought you to, be able to be international speaker, to be able to be an author, like what has inspired that. So we'll go back to, I suppose, your childhood and what was life like growing up as Donna?
Yeah, well, there was nothing really normal about my childhood. If you compare most childhoods, I'm the youngest of 5 siblings, and I'm a twin. And I come from New Zealand, from Auckland, a little suburb called Avondale, which is some Westie chick.
Yeah, a Westie.
And so look, life, I guess, was pretty kind of normal until I was 7 years old, and then everything changed one morning when I woke up very, very early to the sound of my mum screaming at the top of her lungs. And I jumped out of bed and went to my bedroom door, and stepped out to hear my father swearing and yelling as he was chasing my mum down the corridor toward the spiral staircase with a knife. And I stepped out into the corridor just completely shocked, wondering what on earth was going on. It was about 5:30 in the morning. And my mum ran down the bottom of the staircase and tried to reach the handle of the sliding door to escape. And my father drove the knife into her back. And she stumbled along the side path and collapsed to the ground. So I actually witnessed my mum take her last breath. And I was just 7. So it was incredibly devastating.
Yeah, it would. And obviously your whole life would have changed from that moment.
Absolutely.
And I'm guessing you can still remember vividly today, like it was yesterday. Like a traumatic experience like that, it gets imprinted into your brain. It's something that you'll never forget. So, following that, so what? How did that affect your life? So, what happened to your life after something like that?
Well, immediately after that, I remember seeing my father drive away in the back of a police car, and that was a very vivid image too, sort of seeing him leave. And then we were gathered up very quickly, my twin, my older 2 brothers and my sister and I, and we were taken down to my cousin's house down the road. And I remember this really surreal moment where we were sitting on the couch and we heard on the radio that there'd been a murder in our suburb. And it was just kind of really surreal. It was like, is that my mum? Wow, that's my mum,
Yeah.
And so it sort of sunk in then in that moment. It was because there was just so much shock and trauma. And so we were separated, my siblings and I, we were separated, and the family couldn't take us because, there were 5 of us, so it was just too much for any family member to take us. So we were put into foster homes. And the first foster home I went to, the guy, his name was Smith, John Smith, I think, and he was an alcoholic.
Very original name, John.
Yeah,
John Smith.
I know.
Are you sure that's the real name? Is that
I know, it sounds a bit like it, doesn't it? So he was an alcoholic, and I don't remember a female in this house, but I only remember him, and he was, very abusive, extremely abusive. And
physically abusive?
Yes, physical and emotional, mental abuse. Throughout that time I was there. I remember one particular time where he asked me to run a bath for one of the other children that were in the foster home, and I was 7, 8. I had no idea how to run a bath, so I just turned on the hot water, and the little girl got in and scalded herself. And I remember he took his leather belt off his jeans and pulled my pants down, threw me on the bed, and just started belting with his leather belt into my bare ass until I bled.
Yeah, wow, that's crazy. So was everyone else at home, like all your other siblings at home when your mum was murdered? Yeah. So
yes.
they all witnessed it
we
as
all
well.
Saw it.
Yeah, wow.
We all saw it. Yeah. So different levels of trauma, I guess, depending on the age. And my sister was 15 at the time, so of course, as you know, the brain absorbs all this information and sets this kind of timeline of that experience.
So did you jump from, say, foster home to foster home, or was that you just had one during your...
I went to 13.
13.
So basically each time that we were told to move, it was just a matter of put your things in a rubbish bag, belongings in a rubbish bag, we're going to another foster home. And there was never any kind of, reason, or we were never told why we were moving. But of course, every time we moved from one foster home to another, we changed schools as well. So just when you'd establish a little bit of a friendship circle or network, you'd be moving again. And
so could you request to move, or no? Was it just like you put something wherever and you don't get choice?
No, it was just wherever. So it was depending on the foster parents, I guess, how they were coping with the amount of kids in their home, or whether there was a breakup in the family, or whatever their circumstances were, we would be shuffled on to the next home.
Yeah, so did you end up having like any like communication with your siblings? Like were you able to speak with them at all? Or
Yes, at one point my twin brother joined me again, and we were together throughout the rest of the foster homes. But my older brothers and my sister was living like flatting. So she was at an age where she was able to she was in boarding school, I think, for a part of that time, and then she started flatting. So she was the oldest out of all of us. But my older brothers were really, they got into a whole pile of strife. So just rebelling and, the trauma that we'd been through, no emotional counselling, nothing of that sort was offered to us.
No.
So they were acting out, behaving badly, to try and deal with the trauma. And
Yeah. So is that, I've got no idea when it comes to like foster homes, is that like normal protocol now? Like is it still that bad where if they go through like a traumatic experience, are they offered any sort of help, or do you know like if that's got any better or worse? Or
my understanding is it has got quite a bit better.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of programs that have been implemented in homes now for children and also the carers. So there's a lot of support and a lot of resources for both the child and the carer. But back then it was very basic. In fact, so bad back then that there was a huge compensation claim that went on in New Zealand, and that took 7 years. They came to Australia and interviewed me and investigated my file. And another interesting thing about these books is over 7 years, I eventually got some compensation, and I put that money aside. I wanted that money to make a significant impact on children's lives in some shape or form. And I had no idea what it was going to do. I just thought it needs to have a purpose, this money. And
so you put that out to the universe, and obviously something come
it was
back.
almost to the dollar, right?
Yeah, of course.
Those two books,
surprise.
publishing,
Yeah.
500 of those, and it was almost to the dollar the amount of money I got that I put into those books.
Yeah,
Incredible.
That's crazy. People talk about fate or like divine, purpose or whatever. And I think, when something like that comes along, then that's what it was meant to do, when it comes down to like the almost exact dollar.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, crazy. So, I went to a lot of foster homes, and the last foster home I went to, I was there for about 2.5 years, and that was also incredibly abusive. We were all together then, except my older sister, so my 2 older brothers and my twin. So the 4 of us were in this foster home.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of physical abuse toward my older brothers then, because of course, as I said, they were rebelling and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. So there was a lot of physical acting out toward them. And I remember the foster mum really having a thing against me, and I don't know why, but one particular time there was this parcel that arrived at the foster home, and I remember asking her, just as a curious teenager would, what's in the parcel? And she turned to me and she said, "You're a nosy little bitch. You have no, you have no need to know what's in this parcel. You're going to sit down at the table and you're going to write 1,000 lines, and you're going to say you're a nosy little bitch, and those are going to get stuck on the wall in the lunchroom where all of the children eat breakfast, lunch and dinner." And so, of course, the bullying that went on with that was insane. So these, that's the kind of mental abuse that went on in these places.
Yeah, well, like I couldn't imagine going through something like that, and I'm sure now there must be some sort of protocol that to be a foster parent you'd have to go through certain checks and stuff now. But I suppose back then, like they were just happy to have someone that would like take you on, I suppose.
Absolutely, you're so right there. There's a lot more checks, and you've got to have the children's card, the safety card, all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So police checks, everything. I'm sure there was none of that back then. So yeah, you're right. I think it was just whoever put their hand up and said, "Hey, yeah, well," and they, of course, mostly it was money driven because the government was paying them quite a good.
Yeah, and
income.
I was just thinking like. Do you think there was like, because you hear all these stories from back then and how like bad it was, do you think like they almost, obviously there was financial reasons, but was there almost like a need for them to then like to have that power over people or something like, you know what I mean? Does that make sense? Like in my mind, I was like, were they getting off on like getting these kids and being able to like, beat them up or whatever? Because you just hear so many stories, you're like, why was there so many and so few like positive stories? Do you think it might have just been financial, or do you think there was like other?
Oh, look, possibly. There's a lot of dysfunction in those foster homes back then. And, of course, the child's very vulnerable, coming from trauma. They're incredibly vulnerable. And so it's a perfect, opportunity, I think, for somebody that wants to be domineering and controlling or maybe narcissistic to pick on, a very easy target for that. So then when I was 12, a very tough decision was given to me, and that was the authorities, the foster authorities came to the last home, and they said to me, Donna, you've got two choices. You can stay in foster care till you're 18 and you're free to leave. And at this stage I was 12, almost 13, or you can return to your father who's been released from prison. But the toughest part about that decision was I had to go back to the house where he murdered my mum.
Yeah, wow. So take us through some of the thought process, from your mum being murdered. Like, what was the thinking going on in your mind, like about your life? Like, what emotions were coming up? Did you think like that? Was there like a level of unworthiness, or like, did I deserve this? Or like, take me through some of the thoughts that were coming up for someone that's been through like a situation like yourself.
Sure. Well, I guess there's a level of guilt. Like, did I do something to cause this? Was I naughty?
Isn't it funny how kids do that? There's so much evidence around kids blaming themselves for stuff that's happened, like with their parents, which has got nothing to do with them. It's just the way that kids are kind of, we seem to, or the humans seem to, at a young age, blame ourselves a lot. So that's very, very common, and I'd like to look further into that actually. But so what else?
I guess, yes, unworthiness, abandonment, unwanted, a sense of, just feeling, I guess, despair. Like there was no stability in my life. There was no kind of regular normality. So every day was kind of different and unpredictable. And going to school and getting bullied was also another level. So I would go to school and I would be this very odd child because I would probably be wearing, just op shop sort of clothes, whatever was handed to me, whatever I had and traumatized, no, as I said, no support, no counselling. So I would have acted differently and easy target for bullies.
Yeah, so did you find it hard to like make friends at school and stuff? Like, did people know your story, or like, no?
No one knew my story.
No, you kept that real quiet.
Yeah. And even as a teenager, when I went back to the house, I remember walking home from school one day and there were a group of kids walking in front of me, and I remember them talking about the house and how it was a haunted house and that somebody had been murdered in there. And I felt so embarrassed that, to think that's my house, that's my mum, that, there was quite a bit of shame.
Yeah. Well, so, yeah, I could imagine, you want to keep that, keep that under wraps, I suppose.
Especially as a teenager.
Yeah.
You want to fit in. You don't want to be the odd one that...
Yeah, well, I must commend you now, being able to come out. I know you've spoke about this many times, and even you speaking about it now, I don't know how you're feeling inside, but I suppose the emotions aren't like what it used to when you first started talking, and obviously it must have been really tough the first time you spoke out about it. Can you remember the first time you spoke out about it, or
Yes, I remember actually telling my ex-husband, and he was probably the fifth person I'd ever spoken to, and this was only 5-7 years ago, something like that. And he was the one that inspired me to speak on the stage and share my story, because he couldn't believe what I'd been through and the positive, just happy-go-lucky, energetic sort of person that I am today. And he knew that would inspire people to overcome whatever adversity and challenge they have in their life. And so, it was terrifying. But the first time I did it, we had butcher paper and a flip chart of illustrations, very basic illustrations. So because our audience was children, and so it was very age appropriate. but it was a very different way to deliver my talk.
Yeah.
And it was very captivating to the children because they were so desensitized to digital kind of, communication and delivery that going back to old butcher paper and telling a story with this huge flip chart on the stage was like, what is this,
Yeah.
So it was daunting. I was nervous, but I remember a child coming up to me, and I think he was about 8, and he came up and hugged me, and he said, "I'm in foster homes, and you've helped me so much. You're so strong." And I get goosebumps,
Wow.
talking about these stories because, that's what inspired me to keep going.
Yeah, awesome. So we'll go back to, so you said that you had the option to go back with your dad in the same house. So
Yeah.
that's the option you took.
That was the option I took because I'd be reunited with my siblings and
So they all took the same option,
That's
and then
right.
obviously were you able to talk to each other about, like, what are we going to do, like, or was it
No, we just all kind of this is my memory anyway. We just kind of all arrived there and got on with life, and we never spoke about it.
Did you ever speak to your father? Have you ever spoken to you?
No, so my father. Just to give you a bit of a picture of my father, he was pro-Nazi, so he believed in the Aryan race. He spoke 4 languages fluently, so Esperanto, German, Spanish, and English. So he was just such an odd sort of character, genius. He was an engineer and designed the first set of traffic lights in New Zealand, but just a genius. And unpredictable, schizophrenic, alcoholic. So that's who we were living with every day. So we'd come home from school, and if he was playing German records, we would know that he was drunk, and we would just not want to go home because he was, we didn't know what kind of mood he was in. So we had a survival plan basically while we were living with him for 5 years. So from the age of 12 to 17, we were walking on eggshells. We never spoke about the death.
Yeah.
And we just pitter-pattered around him. He slept with a knife next to his bed every night. So, and we knew what he was capable of.
Yeah.
So that was terrifying in itself. Just,
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
having that reminder every night. So
have you spoken with your siblings since about it, or no?
yes, look, to an extent. I've done a lot of work on myself, so I've tried just about every therapy you can imagine, from cognitive to behavioural to psychology to counselling and hypnotherapy. And the last sort of therapy I had was NLP, timeline therapy, which was profound. It was incredible. So much so that I ended up studying it to become a practitioner myself.
Yeah.
And so I've done a lot of work on myself, and I've done a lot of healing, which has enabled me to share my story without shame. Whereas my siblings are not there. They're not in that space. So unfortunately, they don't agree with me sharing my story.
Which must be very tough.
It is really difficult because basically I've been ostracised from the family, so because of that. But I do believe that my story I know it's made an impact on so many lives because people have shared that with me. There was one particular young girl that I spoke at Coombaba High School. I did 4 presentations there, and this one was on resilience, and I shared my story. And she reached out with me on Instagram, and she was suicidal that day. And she said my story knocked some sense into her and made her change her way of thinking.
Yeah, wow, that's powerful. That's that type of driver must, make you want to just keep doing, what you're doing. And it's very hard when you've got family members obviously saying the opposite, like not to do that. But everyone's got to have their own journey. Everyone's got to have their own healing process, and they may not be ready there, and they may not be ever ready. But I think you're obviously doing the right thing. So that's incredible, and you should be very proud of what you're doing. But yeah, so I suppose I want to keep coming back to like your story, because I think there's a bit more there to uncover. So your father, do you know much about your father and his upbringing, like and what led him to be like who he was at all? Do you have any?
I understand he had a very domineering mother,
Yep.
so he may have had issues with females. And I know that he lived in Panama for quite a while, Central America, and he also was in the forces for a while.
Yep.
But yeah, I don't know a lot about him. I don't really know a lot about.
Yep. So
he died when I was 17.
Okay. Yeah. So you end up dying when you're still quite.
Yes. So
quite
we
young.
were still in the home, and he had his second major bypass operation and died on the operating theatre. So, but he was advised not to drink, and he drank himself to death pretty much. So I think that was his way of coping with everything that had happened in his life, and had never spoken about it. So he just numbed the pain with alcohol. And in fact, he also encouraged me to do the same. He bought alcohol for me at the age of 12. And so I was drinking, and we were taking drugs quite early as well. My brothers were growing marijuana and trying different drugs to try and just, numb our pain.
Yeah, and there's a lot of science and study to say, that's what humans do, is, to try and escape reality, to escape thoughts, to escape, and drugs aren't the only means to do that, but there's, TV, there's, entertainment, there's
pornography.
Yeah, there's so many, I suppose, addictions. Some are looked to be more healthy than others, but at the end of the day, if you're still trying to escape reality and escape your thoughts, it's still, I see it still like as a negative, I suppose, distraction to get you away from dealing with what's actually going on inside your mind or inside your body. So I suppose with that, we'll dive into, so what did you think? Obviously you used drugs and that when you were younger, but can you remember when you first started using, I suppose, positive influences or positive, like, what brought you to who you are today? Like, where do you remember your first, like, something happened, or did was it gratitude? Was it, what tools did you find and pick up throughout your journey to get you to where you are now?
Well, it was one night actually when things were pretty dark, and I remember I got the sack from my first job, and I lied to the boss and said I was sick when I was out at the movies or something with a boyfriend. And he actually saw me, or I don't know, something crazy.
Oh, hey.
Yeah. So, and so anyway, I knew that I was going down a bad path. And I remember one night just feeling really lost. And I actually rang Lifeline. And I just spoke about pretty much everything in my life, and I think the counsellor was almost fell off their chair, because it was like, oh no, we can't deal with this over the phone. You're going to have to come in and get some face-to-face counselling.
So that was obviously the first person you ever spoken to about sort of what sort of happened.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you were, say 18, 19 or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to be able to hold something like that in from say 7 to 19 must have been such a relief to try and just be able to tell someone, I suppose. And like I just, from my own personal experience, first time I told someone about my traumatic like experience, it was just like a relief just to be able to get it out, So go on. So what? How did that go after speaking with her?
Well, she advised me to come in and get some face-to-face counselling, which I did. And I invested in that for, I think it probably would have been close to a year of face-to-face counselling. And at the end of that, she actually encouraged me to do the Lifeline telephone counselling course. So she saw how much progress I'd made in that year, and she could really see the value in me helping others because of what adversity I've overcome myself.
So that was your first taste of like, using your experience to then help other people with with their experience.
Absolutely. So
That's
the
powerful.
Lifeline course was incredible. You know, a lot of professional psychologists actually, it's a very reputable course for them also to go on. And suicide prevention training is part of that. If you want it to, you can add that to it. And so I did that as well. And I ended up volunteering on the phones in Sydney for 2 years. And that was an incredible experience. So sometimes you have what's called an overnight shift, and it's where you're on the phones from about 10 till 6 or 8 till 6, something like that. And during that time, you get an array of either regular callers who are very lonely and have no one to turn to, which you have to really restrict the length of those calls because you've got to keep the lines open. But suicide calls was, you know, and
So just to give people an example, like I know the figures myself because of obviously it's something I'm interested in and I talk about, but so how many people would you get calls coming through like at a call center where you were at?
Me personally, on a shift like that, I would probably get maybe 25 calls. Yeah, so there'd be quiet periods, obviously, and then you'd get the regular callers, and you'd get kids that have had too much to drink, or feeling sick and don't know how to tell mum that they're vomiting, or that kind of thing, and then you'd get the odd. And the suicide calls weren't, there weren't a huge amount of them, but they were very impactful when they came. And once you had a suicide call, your shift had to end because it's incredibly draining.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah,
and you need to debrief with one of the supervisors after that call because it has a big impact on the counsellor.
Yeah, okay. So just for people at home listening, there might be some people here that obviously going through tough times, but there would be other people listening, I'm sure, that have got their own story to tell and they've done, and they may want to, be volunteering or do these courses. Like, so how easy is it to do these courses that Lifeline provide? Did you have to pay for them yourself, or did Lifeline pay for them for you so then you could be talking on the phone? Like, how does that all work for anyone there at home that may want to go do something?
Great question. So because they need them. They desperately need volunteers.
I'm sure they would, yeah.
Especially now with COVID and everything that's going on in the world. So it's a 6-month course. Well, that's how long it was when I did it.
Yeah.
And it's subsidised heavily by Lifeline and the government, but there is some you have to pay. And back then I think it was about $200. It wasn't a lot of money.
Which is quite cheap for a course of that length. So, yeah.
But they do hope that you will become a volunteer at the end. So,
of course.
So you finish that course and you can, as my friend did, go into the corporate world and just utilise that for your career and helping others and having that communication, those communication skills and, a little bit of NLP training and that kind of thing. But I chose to volunteer.
Yeah.
It's very rewarding.
Yeah, definitely. So what type of things were you learning in this course? Like did that help with your own healing as well, obviously?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you learn a lot about yourself, about your values and your ethics. And, I remember there was this exercise where you depending on a particular problem or situation, you would go into a corner depending on how you would react in that situation. And then from that, they would sort of describe how your values have made you, respond to the situation that way. And so that was really interesting because you learn a lot about yourself and your values and your ethics. And I think the other thing I learnt was about protecting yourself and realizing that you need to be there and present with the caller during the call and be as, empathic as you can, but you need to also then remove yourself emotionally. And so they sort of had this visual. It was a bit like getting inside the cage with the bird, and you're another bird, and you're having a chat with the bird. But then you've got to get back out of the cage and close the door, and that's their stuff, and you're free. to go.
Because
allow
I
yourself to be free.
definitely agree with that, because we take on other people's energies and be very draining, and to take on all these people's pains, to identify with them, which you do, and then to be able to say, well, that's not mine, and to be able to let it go and give it back. So have
and
you got
understanding your triggers as well?
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So have you got any tools for people that are taking on other people's like energies and stuff like that? Is there anything that you use then to help with, like you say, like with the birds and stuff like that? What?
Yeah. Well, I used this really cool example on stage when it came to bullying, because especially with words, I think cyberbullying, this kind of thing, which is very common.
Yeah.
And kids are taking their lives, and unfortunately, a lot of this is due to a lack of resilience. So children of this kind of generation have been rescued so much from consequences. So there's a lot of helicopter parenting going on. And, I'll give you an example. Billy, he's left his lunch at home, and, the school office rings Mum and says, hey, Mum, Billy's left his lunch at home. Oh, okay, I'll get in the car and I'll race Billy's lunch back to the school. Now, Billy never learns the consequence of leaving his lunch behind by going hungry and going, that didn't feel too good. Tomorrow, I'm going to remember my lunch, because there was actually a physical consequence, and a natural one, a very natural one. It's not dangerous. It's a natural consequence of his actions that he forgot his lunch. So this is what we're doing to kids, is we're rescuing them, and then they don't develop coping mechanisms and resilience to deal with the real world. So when real tough issues come along in their life, they don't have the tools, the resilience and the coping mechanisms to deal with it. And then we're living in an instant gratification world as well. So everything is like now, we want it now. And unfortunately that goes to the pain as well. So for a lot of children and teenagers that don't, obviously, as you know, with the brain and how it develops, and the prefrontal cortex doesn't develop till, for a man in their 20s, for a woman in their late teens, early 20s, so they don't have any concept of forward thinking or how things may get better in the future. There's no logic to it. So they can't see that. So they think in the moment. They want instant gratification. They want an instant kind of relief. I'm feeling pain. I don't know how to deal with it because I haven't got any resilience. I want it over.
And no coping mechanisms either.
So suicide is often the option, unfortunately.
Yeah. So just some stats out. So for people that may not know, so generally around about 3,100 and something people have committed suicide in the last, 3 years, or no, every year for the last 3 years. It's around about that figure. It obviously plus or minus, 100 or 200 people. So that's 8 people a day commit suicide in Australia. And, I think, 75% of them are men. But something that was really interesting that I found out is the amount of attempted suicides is absolutely crazy. So I think it's like 60,000. That's only people that they know. So how many people have attempted and not. And also when it comes to suicide, like how many people have died in a single vehicle car accident and it's been put down as a car accident, not you. So the suicide may be much higher. And the amount of people that attempt suicide and the amount of people that have thought of suicide is even higher again. So it is such a big issue at the moment. So I think it's really important. People like yourself that are doing such great work. And it's just something that I think needs to be at the forefront of, employers, forefront at the schools. We need to really rethink, as you're talking about, so important, like rethink how we are parenting our kids, right? Because that's the next generation. And something that I've learned is, in our life, some people like you have obviously a lot more, but a general everyday person goes through 3 major injustices, like whether it's like, a death of a parent or, it's something that life is just not fair. Like, it's something that's really major and the average person goes through at least 3 of them. So we know this. So we know that doesn't matter who you are, you're going to go through a lot of shit, right? So, okay, cool. Now that we know this, how can we prepare people, instead of, wanting to helicopter parenting or wanting to, let your kids go through, and I see it a lot with, have you seen like the monkey bars for back in the 1900s, what it looked like? You know what I mean?
No.
It was, it's like, 10 meters in the air, like, it's massive, this, and there were kids running up it, and you're just like, holy crap. Like today, they would never allow that, and they put bubble wrap, like this high.
Yeah.
So I think, people have got to be aware, and you've got to let kids make mistakes. You just got to let them make the mistakes. Stop trying to stop them, because then they don't get these coping mechanisms. They don't get the consequence of falling off the monkey bars or whatever. And I know this may, some people are like, oh, well then, some of the kids may have died like falling off that. Yeah, okay, like 1 or 2 kids may have died, but then because they haven't learnt the resilience, they haven't, another 10 now are dying from suicide as opposed to 2. Does that make sense? Like,
it so does.
I'm not trying to like, say, you should.
Condone it. No.
Yeah, you're not trying to say, let kids, do stupid stuff, but at the same time, you got to let them learn their own lessons, like, not take the lunch to school. That must be, I'm not a parent, so I don't know. You might be able to speak more. It would be hard as a parent to not want to give your kids everything, especially if you didn't have everything. So I understand the psychology and wanting to do that for your kids if you didn't have that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so can you shed some light on that, since you are a parent?
That's really interesting, because especially if you have come from a separated marriage and, you have that kind of that dynamic, I guess, of one parent against the other or offset the other. But I think it's really interesting. I think overcompensating either from your past experience as a child or the fact that you have come from a split marriage is really important, that you are consciously aware of that, and because it is a detriment to the child if you do that. So having that conscious awareness is really important, and I just think children, that's part of life. The fact that people split up, marriages break up, it's more common than ever now. So children going through that is like you said, the 3 kind of indifferences or whatever might happen in your life. That's part of life. And if children know that life is a roller coaster, and it is tough, and it's good and it's bad, and it's a matter of getting up again and, looking at the hope of a new day and going, I can get through this. It's really important for children to develop that stuff. So, yeah.
I think it's important that, I know I've spoke about it before on the podcast with other guests, but that, teaching kids, it's kind of like that video game, scenario, or that video game analogy that I like to use. It's like, you're born and, your first level of life is like, the first stage where, everything's kind of given to you, you're fed, and everything's sort of easy. And that's like the first level of the video game. It's quite easy, right? And then you get up through the levels, and like each level, you learn a new skill, like you may be jumping over or whatever, you learn the new skill. And then at the end of like the level, you got like the boss, which is like the big baddie you got to overcome. And life's, like these challenges that we get through life is kind of like the boss, But it's learning all these lessons through your days and through your levels, that when you get to the boss, you've got the tools to then beat the boss. So when you're tackled with a challenge, the boss, and you don't beat it, then what, in a video game, your kids will sit there all day and try, they're determined to get past this level, and you've got to try and take that sort of mentality into life. Like when you come up against challenges, when you come up against stuff, instead of throwing your hands up and, give up, know that once you get past this, because, there's probably going to be more challenges that come through you. The stuff that you're going to learn in that challenge, and, that grit and that determination and resilience that you talk about, that's the type of stuff that, you need to let these kids know that, you're just learning life skills to then move up to the next level of your life. And then, when you go to that level, guess what? There's probably going to be another challenge that comes along, and that's okay. And you're actually learning and growing throughout your whole life. And these aren't going to, I think Jim Rohn said it best. Life. You don't want to wish for life to be easy. You want to wish that you get better, right? That's the whole.
Absolutely better than yesterday. And I love that analogy that you use about the games, because I think kids can really relate to that.
Exactly, and that's
so
why.
much,
Yeah.
I mean, look, if we didn't overcome something as babies, we'd all be crawling around still today, wouldn't we?
Yeah, that's
you know what I
right.
mean? So we ended up having to fall and stumble and trip and fall and bang our heads a few times, and now we're standing up and walking. So that was something we overcame naturally.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that, but I this is probably going a bit off topic, but it's funny how, like, when a kid fails, you know what I mean? Like, at walking, you're like, come on, no, good try. Like, you go again. But as, like, adults, if, like, we fail at, like, a business, people look at you like, oh, you've failed, instead of, like, going, oh, good try. Let's have another go. Let's have another go. Because, that's how you became to walk, right? Is you kept failing until you've eventually done it. And that's how we should be with, business, with life, with everything. Failure isn't. I know it's cheesy, and you probably hear it all the time. Failure isn't a failure if you learn the lessons that you need to learn. Yeah. But I think it's definitely real important to install that level of resilience, because you look at our parents and our grandparents and what they went through and how tough their life was. Like, we've actually got it quite easy today, like in comparison. And I think I was just talking to Adam at the front before, and he was, every day he wakes up and he watches this video of this guy. He had an accident and he can't talk. Oh, he can talk, but through a voice, like a thingo. But, paraplegic from there down. And, he's like, every day he wakes up just to be grateful that he can still talk through a voice thing, to be able to breathe. Like, these are the stuff that we don't even.
Magic.
You know what I mean? Like,
and when you talk about gratitude,
here we go. Don't get me and Donna going.
This is really our subject, right? This is what we love, And, I think when I look at my life, I say that I'm grateful for it. And people go, well, how could you be grateful for all that trauma and all that abuse and all, your mum and everything? I say, well, I'm not necessarily saying I'm grateful for the experiences that happened to me, but what I'm grateful for is what I've learned because of those experiences that I wouldn't have had I not gone through them, and that I'm now able to help others because of. And that's a gift. That's something to be truly grateful for, So that's a beautiful place to be if you can be in that space.
Yeah, another analogy that, the harder your life is, or the harder the challenge is, the equal amount of opportunity of growth there is, you know what I mean, of good. So everything in life has got a balance of positive and negative, no matter what the experience is. And it is very tough in the moment when you're going through it to see the good in things, you know what I mean? It's not until later on that you see, but to be able to teach yourself in the moment that there is equal amounts of positive in this is a very empowering way to look at any sort of challenge. And I know that's tough. Like, I'm not sitting here saying, like, it's, easy, everyone can do it. No, I still struggle with it myself. But, to train yourself every time something comes up in your life, just know that there's an equal amount of positive and negative to every situation. And look for the positive, look for what went right, or what you're going to learn, or what you're going to get out of it. Is definitely real empowering, something that I think is real important to.
Yes, absolutely. Well, that's Man's Search for Meaning, isn't it? That's what that book's all about.
That's a great book. Yeah,
isn't it incredible?
Viktor Frankl. Yeah.
Just he lived and breathed that in Auschwitz, and just his whole experience of, even when the soup arrived to him and it was fly infested, and in that moment, he saw the gratitude in this meal that was being presented to him of fish heads with flies flying all around it. And, it's fascinating how people behave differently in those environments. One will share their bread, another will steal the bread, depending on, how they respond to their environment.
Yeah.
Getting off the subject.
Yeah, that's cool. That's good. Yeah, that's going to happen a lot, I'm sure, throughout this whole. But I suppose I want to keep trying to come back, and we'll talk about gratitude and stuff. But I like, things are popping up. So many things are popping up in my head. I want to try and get everything out. But I just want to go back to. So, what do you think the difference was or is between you and your siblings and why you were able or are able to have moved, to see the positives in that, and they haven't. Is there anything that you could maybe share to know, what the difference was with you, and then be able to like tell other people like this is, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, and I don't know that I can fully answer that, other than to say that the level of healing and therapy that I've done on myself, my personality type, so being an extrovert, being the sort of person that I am, and maybe the way I responded to my environment in the moment was different. We all have a model of the world, how we see life, and everybody's model of the world's different. So, I really can't fully answer that.
That is a very tough question.
Yeah,
I just thought I'd
it's a good one.
I know there is a study done saying of they had like 100 twins, you know what I mean, and they will obviously they got the same DNA, the same everything, and one was like in jail and the other one was really successful, and they were like, well, what was the difference? You grew up in the same house, so and one, the answer was always the same. It was like, well, one was like, well, I'm this way because of my dad, and the one that's in jail because like his dad was obviously in jail and did drugs and whatever, so he went along, well, I'm like this because of my dad. And the other one said the exact same answer, I'm like this because of my dad. So one was like, I'm following my dad, and I was like, well, I'm never going to be like my dad, right? So exactly the same experience, exactly the same, but all that difference was their mindset around the perception of I either, well, of course I'm just going to follow what my dad did, or there's no fucking way I'm going to be like my dad. So that's really cool.
Fascinating. We've talked a bit about coding before, and isn't it amazing when a child is given a certain message as a child? You're very creative. You're an amazingly creative person. And then if we put two twins, myself, I'm talking specifically of, my twin brother is incredibly artistic. And I was always told that I have a business mind, and I'm very not logical, but I'm a businesswoman. I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to be the successful businesswoman. And so I steered away from the creativity. And so it's because often of the messaging, the coding that you have as a child on how you respond to.
Yeah, that's very interesting because, I suppose that's the whole nature versus nurture, which, I think there is a level of both, obviously everyone's got their own DNA and their own sort of life lessons that they need to learn. I suppose that's going a bit spiritual, but
the Dharma.
Yeah, but then there's also that nurture, you know what I mean, of how you treat your kids. So there's a fine line between like you're saying of being over cautious or over, you know what I mean, but then you can also let them make their own mistakes, but giving them positive messages and letting them know that they are awesome people and creative and all that type of stuff. So I think it's a fine line. So how did you find with your kids? Like what are the things that you did with your kids that were a lot different, I suppose?
Well, I was very conscious of really encouraging my kids to be independent. So I didn't want them to be needy to me. I wanted them to be kind of healthy, balanced, independent adults growing up. And I wanted them to understand the consequences of their actions and how they need to be prepared for the real world and have the skills that are necessary. I remember my daughter, there was a significant time when my daughter overcame her 7th birthday, and it was obviously a very kind of it triggered a lot of stuff from my childhood. So as soon as she turned 8, I was very happy that, hey, you got over that, even though really she's not gone through any trauma, but it was just something mental in my timeline, really, that was a little bump in the road. And I was like, yes. Yeah. So, and so it's really important too when we talk about overcoming any challenges, is to celebrate the win when we do, because the chemicals that are released in the brain are incredible. And if we can try and get addicted to those chemicals, it's really healthy for us to then start to pursue, bigger goals and that kind of thing. So my daughter, she was actually bullied really badly in year 9, which is a very common year for girls to be bullied in year 9. So it's about the age 14. And she was bullied by her best friend. Something happened between them and they were just inseparable. And then all of a sudden, this girl turned almost the entire sort of group of friends against my daughter. And it was a very traumatic time for my daughter. It went on for most of year 9. So it was very extended. And I encouraged her to go and see a psychologist, and she did. And the psychologist gave her lots of tools for coping while she was at school and coming into school and having to see the group of friends and that kind of thing. But one thing that I had to be really tough about, and it was a really tough decision, it was talk about tough love. I had to take all social media off her because most of the bullying was happening online. And when that is their world, we're talking Snapchat, we're talking Instagram, not so much Facebook, but that's their world. And so I had to make that decision that was not, you're just not going to have it because it's negative at the moment. It's not a positive experience for you. And all she had was YouTube, basically. She could look at YouTube videos and that kind of thing, and Messenger. And that was only for a select group of people. And I remember at the end of that year, she came up to me and she said, I asked her, would you like Instagram back? You're not getting Snapchat till next year, but you. And she said to me, I actually don't miss it anymore, Mum. I actually don't need it. And she said, I'm really glad that you did that, even though it was really hard at the time, because it made me present and it made me recognise how important other things in life are. And it was one of those moments where I thought, wow, okay, I've done a good job here. At the time, it wasn't easy to do, She slammed the door and all kinds of things, swearing at me,
The big tantrum.
Yeah. But I just had to stick to it.
Yeah. So do you feel like, did you, obviously your programs are about resilience. So we might move into like the resilience. So what are you teaching when you go to your schools and you do your presentations about resilience, and did you learn them through yourself, or did you like use them with your kids? And that's, is that how you sort of like, how did the resilience program come about?
Yeah. Well, the first part of obviously my presentations is normally about sharing my story, so that people understand where I'm coming from and the experiences that I've had and what adversity I've overcome. So. And then the P.E.A.C.E tools, which are the anchor of my presentations and both my school presentations and my children's show, and also my speaking as a keynote speaker. And these P.E.A.C.E tools were phenomenal, actually. I did test them with my children, but they came to me in a meditation one day. So I just started to present a show called The Dream Guards with my husband at the time. And I was sharing my story, as I said, with the flip chart and that kind of thing. And I remember thinking, we need to provide some tools for these kids. Like, it's all fun and there's a lot of, singing and jumping around and exercise and all that kind of thing, and then my story. But I want to leave them with something that they can take away with them. And I thought I really wanted to use the universal sign for stop, which is the hands up high in the air, right? And I wanted an acronym that they could remember when they walked away. And so I had that intention when I went into my meditation, and I came out of this meditation and my P.E.A.C.E tools were born. And I remember just feeling phenomenal. I was like, oh my God, these P.E.A.C.E tools, like, they're just incredible. And I wrote them down, and it's just a beautiful message, because everybody wants peace in their life. Everybody wants peace in the world. And
How relevant is that right now, especially with
More
what's
than
going
ever,
on?
right? Yeah. So it's a beautiful message, beautiful acronym, and an easy way to remember it. And so, yeah, so these peace tools, P, protect yourself and be powerful, and it's about standing tall with your shoulders back and your head held high. And it's statistically proven that if you do that, you are, really showing how confident you are, and you are less likely to be bullied. So that's the proof
So
behind that.
there's also I'll just
Yeah.
there's Jordan Peterson talks a lot about it in his book too, and there's a lot of science behind physiology and how physiology affects your mood, which then affects your behaviors. So just by power posing, which is what you basically Amy Cuddy, I think there's a good YouTube video with her talking about it. So just power posing, so put your shoulders back, you put it in power position. Can I think raise your testosterone by like 20% and lower your cortisol. So automatically it's sending, letting chemicals go and telling your brain that, oh, hey, I must be confident because of my physiology is sending all these signals. So your physiology is just like energy or emotions, like energy, sending all this information to your brain saying, hey, I must be confident or I must be powerful right now because I'm in this position of that powerful, right? So just by using your physiology, and this includes breathing, because we can control our breathing, right? We can change it however we like. So you can control your breathing and you control your physiology, which will send all these signals to the brain to then help you be in a state of mind that you want to be in, to then help you go through, the way you change your state, and then you look at things differently, right?
Absolutely.
So yeah, there's a lot of science on this, guys, so you can definitely go and look it up yourself. But yeah, physiology and breathing are two massive things that you can do to change your state and to change the way you're looking at things. So but
it's quite phenomenal, really. I mean, you look at the Rocky pose, and Rocky Balboa, and how he had his arms up in the air, and that's an incredibly empowering pose, by the way. So if you're ever going to be on the stage, that's what I do that before I go out, and it's an incredibly empowering pose, actually.
So for me, I use that, and then before I go on stage, I obviously do that. But yeah, a big part of it is the gratitude as well. Like, puts you in a very powerful state to be able to be grateful to pass on wisdom to other kids and other people. And I've got my own little. I'm sure you do got your own little rituals to get yourself in the state of mind. It's all about changing your state to put yourself in the state of mind to handle whatever situation it is that you're in, because you can do the opposite with this too. So you can be slumped down like that, and all the chemicals go the other way. Then and it's just telling your brain, well, I must be depressed or must be tired or blah blah. So yeah, there's a lot of science that goes behind doing that. So yeah, definitely recommend it for sure.
Yeah, it's amazing. So then the next letter is E, and it stands for escape the situation. So in whatever circumstance you're in, whether you're being bullied or abused, and this goes online as well, is to remove yourself. So, walk away, run away. I like to skip, so I skip away. But, just get yourself away from the situation. And that's turning off your device and moving away from the computer, whatever it might be. So, so that's the next one. Then A is armor. And this is about using your imagination to build a powerful armor around your body. So we can do this in any way we want, visualize whatever you want. But it's about not allowing people's opinions and words or whatever to come past your armor, because it's just too powerful. So, and that's the gift I was talking about before, this beautiful gift. It's one that it's actually I believe it's some kind of Buddhist kind of story about how, passing a gift to another person. And if the person declines the gift, then who owns the gift? Is it the person that's passing the gift? Do they still own the gift, or is it the person that's declined the gift? And, you ask the audience, and of course they're going to say, well, it's the person that's passing the gift on. They still own the gift because the person's declined it. Okay, so if we're in a situation where we are, hurtling abuse at someone, whether it be online or whether it be, face-to-face, if you decline that, turn off your device or decide, I'm not listening, erase it, or just walk away, who owns the abuse? It's the person that's projecting the abuse on someone else. It's not you, because you have declined it. So, so this powerful armor you can build around your body. And I say, you know, a lion never loses sleep over the opinions of sheep. So be the lion.
Yeah.
The next one is C, and it stands for creating strong friendships in your community. So it's all about community.
Can I just stop you for a
Yeah,
second?
yeah,
So
yeah.
before you go on to the C,
Sure.
so with that protectiveness, so I think something that will help people when it comes to like protecting yourself is realize that, you know, anyone that's throwing abuse at you or whatever, it's just a projection of what's going on inside them. It's never normally about you. Like, it's very, very rarely about the actual person. So once you get an understanding of this, you can look at someone throwing abuse at you, and you can actually come from a level of empathy and compassion for that person, because you're like, man, they must be hurting heaps inside to be able to project and throw that type of abuse. Like, if that person was happy and at peace, do you think they'd be doing that? No, they're not. So that's a good way for me to protect myself, is to know that not take anything personally. Like, you know, I mean, whether it's, you know, rejection or whether it's, you know, abuse or whatever it is, 9 times out of 10, or even, you know, like 10 times out of 10, it's got zero to do with you at all. And I think that's a really important takeaway and something that has really helped me, like, with my life, and helped me navigate through when there's been times of, you know, people you know, throwing abuse, or people are acting in, even like a boss, even at work. So if a boss at work's being a real pain in the ass, to say it as nice as possible. But I mean, I then try and relate back to, well, why are they acting this way? You know, is it
That's
with me, or
happening at
maybe
home.
they've got issues at home with their partner, or maybe they've got, you know what I mean, and being able to do yourself that and take yourself away from the situation and go, well, it's not about me, is a great way to protect yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah, I
And
agree.
another thing I remember you talking about before, I know this is, well, I'm going way back, but when you were saying about taking on people's energies and stuff like that, you know, this is a way to protect yourself. But if you do happen to take on energy from someone else, or the situation or life or whatever, a real powerful tool that I've found works, and I know works, is like go into like the ocean or running water or even the shower, and just close your eyes and just picture the ocean or whatever, the water just washing away that negative energy, and just that visualization, and you, like, it's very,
Beautiful.
very, very powerful. And I know it definitely works, especially if you're in the shower. Just turn the shower on, close your eyes, just picture that water running over your face, running, and just grabbing all the negative energy from the day, grabbing it all down, and just watch it going down the sink. And you'll find
Beautiful.
that you'll wake or open your eyes, and just doing that for a couple of minutes, how different. And then you're like, okay, cool, now I can start, you know, my afternoon or whatever, without carrying that energy that you've picked up throughout the whole day. Is another cool way of that armor. You know what I mean? Of, you know, if someone has penetrated the armor, here's a cool tool to
I love that.
get it away.
Love
so,
that.
Yeah.
And just remembering hurt people hurt people. That's
Exactly.
such an easy way to remember it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad you said that, because I was supposed to say that, and then it obviously got rambling, and yeah, so that was awesome.
Yeah. So then the
Fantastic.
C is,
Yeah.
like I said, creating strong friendships in your community. So, and now more than ever, right, with COVID and everything, we've felt really disconnected. And so having a strong support network around you, friends, family, your tribe that you can reach out to for support and help, and showing that in return too, whether that be in the school community, just show some kindness and compassion and have each other's back a little bit. You know, we're all sisters and brothers. We are all connected. And that's what this is all about, which we'll talk about in a minute. But
you know,
yeah,
and this is a good, you know, support. You know, if you want some support, it's a
Yeah.
great app. You know what I mean? Like, and find yourself, resources, whether it be friends, family, or whatever, and people that you trust, and you know, I mean, there's a lot of studies and science out there today. You know what I mean? Of, you know, if you've gone through something traumatic or whatever, just being able to talk about it, and, you know, I mean, replay the situation, like they call it, like exposure therapy, I suppose. The more that you're able to sort of like speak about it, and and then it gets easier and easier, and then by the end of it, you're able to like speak about whatever happened and not even have a reaction to it, because you've every time, as long as you're not doing it in a negative way, in a like shameful, it's my fault way, it's just being able to say it is a good way to expose yourself to that, and not, as long as it's, like I said, not as if, as long as it's not in a negative light, and you're not actually replaying it and seeing it as being more traumatic than what it is, which we can do as well as humans because our brain's trying to protect us. But if you're doing that with a psychologist, like a trained person or someone that you trust, then it's a good way to
heal.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, for sure. So the last one is E, and that's kind of marrying up with the app. So the E is about expressing your emotions. So it's about reaching out for the help and support you need if you're being bullied or abused, and being the upstander in your community. So if you see somebody being bullied or abused, also to reach out. So there's many, many support services available. We have an incredible array of support for any situation, basically. So reach out for that support. And it's not a weakness, it's a strength. So reach out for that support and heal from whatever has happened, and hopefully help others to do the same.
Yeah, definitely. So I know you said then, so if you see other people getting bullied, to step in, like that can be very tough and confronting, and like I definitely know this, but I know it's something that I picked up at the mines. Like the standard you walk past is the standard you accept, right? So if you are able to walk past that, then you're showing that you are accepting that as normal behavior, which and I'm not saying like to step in if if you're going to get in harm's way or anything, but if you're able to, then it's very powerful, not only for yourself and staying true to your values and staying congruent to who you are, but you're also teaching other people that it's okay to stand up, and that to do the right thing, and it can be very inspiring and very empowering to other people. For you just to take the action, the aligned action to yourself, which will then help them go, well, you know what, that person stood up to a bully, like I can do it. And that's how you create a culture change, right? Is to be able to do that. And I had another point, but I completely lost it.
You're really showing authentic leadership, aren't you?
Yeah. Oh, the other thing was when you're saying how much courage it takes to open up, and I don't like the word vulnerability, because the word vulnerability in a sense was used like vulnerable in a physical sense, and vulnerable in a physical sense means weakness, right? So I don't like using the word vulnerable, but like I like the word you used is like courage, or brave, and for anyone that's been through anything before, anyone that wants to stand up to a bully and be, and to be able to talk about the emotions and stuff like that stuff there takes so much courage and so much inner strength to do that is so, like, we can't look at these people as being, like, that's why I said I don't like the word vulnerable, because it evokes like weakness. I like to use the word definitely courage, and it's so hard to speak up. But it is, generally the hardest thing to do is the right thing to do, right? And to teach people, like, if they do speak up, to be like, wow, like, that you're so powerful, and let's just change this, of it being a weakness, and let's like put this capsulation around it of, that's, it takes so much bravery and so much strength and courage to be able to open up and say how you feel and stuff like that, especially as young, like, men or young guys. We're taught to, it's actually easier to sit there and not say anything. So that is an actual weakness. That's, like, to me, we need to let people know that is actually weakness. Because generations ago that was looked at as being strong. Well, he's not letting these no, he's just stuffing them down with drugs and alcohol and every other negative. Like, no, that's not the way to go about it. And I know for me, like, I know that was, I never talked about any of my stuff, because I was, like, my dad was very, when he was, well, I never seen him, like, never seen him cry or whatever once in our life or express any emotion. Like, I remember at like our granddad's funeral, like he didn't even like cry or nothing. I was just like, and you know what I mean. So we were just sort of seen as, you know, that's what you did as a man. Like you just sort of bottled it up. You didn't say anything. You just kind of got on with life. You know, that's what you do. Like, and we're taught that that's strength when it's not. And you know, you say yourself, how hard was it to open up the first time, and how much strength did that take? Because that's way more powerful. It takes way more strength and bravery than what it did to sit in silence and to not say anything, right?
Sure, 100%.
Mm.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we'll go on to this baby here behind us, Donna.
Yeah. Well, this is the Global Gratitude Chain movement, and this is a tiny slice of it, tiny piece of it. It's 4.5 football fields long now. The big plan with this was that it was going to go on the Ellen DeGeneres show, but then there's no Ellen DeGeneres show anymore. So we're aiming for Oprah. Anybody knows Oprah?
Yeah, right. Oprah.
Okay, reach out. So there's an interesting story behind this. So one evening, on a Saturday evening, a family reached out to me. They were friends of the family because their 14-year-old girl in year 9 was being relentlessly bullied for 9 months. And she'd had enough. She was suicidal. And the parents were beside themselves, not knowing what to do. And they reached out to me, and I gave them a few tools in the moment. She can't be left alone, Suicide Watch. And I will be there in the morning to come and talk to her and do what I can, you know. And so I arrived on Sunday morning with some resources, some positive affirmations that she could have on a mirror, and some books. And one of them is From Bully to Brilliant, which is absolutely phenomenal book on bullying. Karen Clark, she's the Sunshine Coast author.
Okay.
She could be a good one for your podcast, by the way.
Cool.
So
I'll
I'll
write
put
that
you in
one
touch
down.
with her. I'll put you in touch with her. And anyway, yes, so 9 months of being bullied relentlessly, and I spoke to her, and once I'd finished, I shared my story with this 14-year-old girl. And I'll never forget it. Once I'd finished sharing my story, she came up to me and she hugged me with tears in her eyes, and she said, "If you can get through all of that, I can get through this." And within about 3 weeks, we had a Dream Guards community event, fundraising for some charity, and she offered to volunteer at one of the event tables, and I had different activities set up at different tables before the show, and one of them was a gratitude table, and it was just little links, pieces of paper, and people would write down what they were grateful for in their life. And over that day, she just started to make a little Christmas chain, and this Christmas chain she hung around her neck, and I went up to her and said, "Wow, that's amazing. This is all the gratitude everybody's been writing, yes, so that was the start of the Global Gratitude Chain movement. So, and now I have received links from most countries around the world.
Cool.
People have stopped and taken a mindful moment just to really think about what they're grateful for in their life. And some of the shares have been really profound. I'm grateful that I've survived a hold-up, like a armed hold-up.
Yeah.
I'm grateful that I've survived a helicopter crash. I'm grateful that I've survived escaping the Bosnian War, 3 suicide attempts, domestic violence, all kinds of shares. So they're quite profound.
Definitely
the shares.
very powerful.
Yeah, beautiful energy, beautiful history. And we've got to keep it going. We've got to keep the energy of this chain moving. And more so now than ever, that we've kind of over the last 2 years felt quite disconnected to humanity with COVID, and I think it's more important than ever. So these are sisters and brothers, side by side, from all cultures, from all races, from all religions, taking a mindful moment and sharing their gratitude.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. So if anyone wants to add to that, you can obviously get a hold of me, or you can get a hold of, how can we get a hold of you, Donna?
On my website, probably, Donna-Leigh Perfect.com, and that's with a hyphen, Donna-Leigh, Leigh, perfect.com. So, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so down the bottom there, Donna-Leigh Perfect, if anyone wants to get a hold of her with that. So when you're talking about there about this girl reached out and she was suicidal, and you said, you went through like a bit of a protocol. So yeah, I'm guessing that's what you learnt from the Lifeline. Yeah. So just to let people know at home, if someone does reach out to them and, maybe they are, thinking about suicide or whatever, like what should people do? Like what's the best form of action for someone to do, or what can we look out for with people if, they look to be, you think they are suicidal? Have you got any sort of, I suppose tools or anything you can help people in that situation?
There are some specific kind of signs we should look for when people are showing signs of suicide, and some of those are isolation, so they tend to pull back from their social network quite a bit, and they isolate themselves more. They are quite withdrawn and quite introverted. Generally, they'll start to really withdraw. They quite often will give away important things, the possessions that they have. So things that are they treasure in their life, they'll start to give them away. They'll start to talk about how hopeless their life is and how there's no hope, there's no point. So there'll be little sort of in the conversation, you'll get to read little messages and signs. So in any of those cases, it's really important that you have the resources to be able to gear them towards some service like Lifeline. And I think Lifeline really is probably one of the best for them to reach out to.
Definitely the most well-known one anyway. Yeah.
But then you've got Headspace for, I think it's 12 to 25-year-olds. They're not open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week as far as I know. So I don't know that their service is available around the clock. Lifeline definitely is. Men's Line, DV 1-800-RESPECT, that kind of thing. So there are a lot of services, and it's really important you reach out to a professional. And then from there, support the person as much as you can in helping them heal and work through their issues.
Yeah, I know another one that they talk about a lot is, people getting their affairs in order, you know what I mean? Like sorting out, all of a sudden they're sorting out life insurance, all of a sudden they're sorting out, like things that
that's a good one.
Would normally they would never be looking to
writing their wills.
Writing their wills, or, reaching out to people and going, hey man, you've been a really good friend, like as if like, well, yeah, but like they're trying to like, let you know that, like that, almost like they're going,
getting some closure.
Yeah, so those are some little cues that I know are very important when it comes to suicide as well.
Yeah. So there's a lot of support there for sure. And at the end of the day, this is a hard message to say. I mean, first of all, we do need to have the conversations more so than ever before about suicide. So that conversation needs to be, a regular conversation we're talking about, and not to be afraid of it. Are you in fear of hurting yourself or taking your life? And that's a tough conversation to have with somebody that you love. But it's important the answer to that. And having the support, having the person there that they can reach out to, and it may be their closest friend, and then the friend helps them to ring Lifeline, but that sort of pinky pal, that person they can call on.
That's very important. I suppose. I think the big thing is definitely reaching out and getting the support and being able to feel comfortable in reaching out to people. So, just be open to listening and not, I suppose, not be judgmental or whatever. Just sort of like being open to people allowed to come to you. So
so that's why I always say we've got 2 ears and 1 mouth. The reason.
Definitely. Do more listening and less speaking. 100%. Can you think of like any other tools that you've used in your life to help you overcome like situations or challenges yourself?
Definitely my fitness has helped me
Yeah.
a lot. So I'm active every day, and I know that really helps my mental health. So, we know all the chemicals that are released when we exercise and how important that is for our mental health. And for me, being outdoors and vitamin D is also another way for me to improve my mental health. So, and being in great gratitude, so just being grateful for your environment, being in the moment, and not worrying about the future that's never, is not a reality. Only this moment now is a reality. So trying to be as present as you can, and letting the past go. And if you are bringing up the past, learn from it and hopefully use it in an inspirational way. But being present and getting outdoors more, vitamin D, exercising.
Yeah, definitely. So there's a lot of science and study when it comes to exercise, in particular exercising outside as well. So I know for me, if I'm not exercising, like everything goes to pieces, right? It's just it's so important. And I mean, I know there was I can't remember the doctor's name now, but he was like, if you could get all the benefits from exercise and put it in a pill, it'd be the most fucking soul pill in the world, right? So the amount of benefits that you get from, I'm not condoning taking a pill that's going to fix something, but for me, it's almost like a building block for me. Then all my other habits come from sort of that exercise, you know what I mean? And I suppose, For me, exercise, like I said, it's definitely a building block, and then from there, like gratitude is probably my other building block because I mean there are times when you're injured or whatever and you can't can't exercise. So gratitude is another real powerful one. Like there's people there that like we were talking about before, that guy, and he couldn't move because he's like quadriplegic. Like you can't tell him to go exercise, right? But someone like the late Steve Hawkins, at the end of his life, he couldn't do nothing but talk through a voice speaker or whatever. He couldn't move. He had one of the most, I suppose, one of the worst diseases you could get, that motor neuron disease. Like, that would be a horrible life to live, and to be able to live with that for so long. I think he was told he was only going to live for 3 more years. He lived 20 years or whatever it was. But at the end of his life, they asked, about his life, and he goes, "Oh, who could have wished for more?" You know what I mean? Like,
Beautiful.
he was that happy with his life, and most of us would be like, we'd be down and out, right? It'd just be, and he was like, who could have wished for more? And for him to have said that, he was just so grateful for what he did, and that was one of the big tools that he used. When it comes to like people like Einstein, when it comes to all these people that are really successful and really, what we would call like kind of mastered life, and they all come back to gratitude. So that's why I know you're really big on it. For me, I'm massive on it. Gratitude is a fantastic tool that I would recommend anyone start, like a gratitude journal, start looking for things that you're grateful for throughout the day, any situations that traumas that like yourself that have been through, write down all the positive, all the stuff that you're grateful for, the lessons that I've learned. And if it's just happened, it's very hard for you to have that foresight, but what could I learn from this, and then be grateful for that. So gratitude is
even in relationship breakups, for instance, I mean, you in the moment you're grieving and you're going through all those levels of grief, but even in that moment, if you can be consciously aware, instead of resisting it and why did it happen to me, why not somebody else, what did I do wrong, instead actually being in flow with it and recognizing that there's a lesson and why this is ended. What lesson, what skill did I need to learn that I didn't have prior to this relationship? Or what has it awakened me to within myself that I need to be in tune with? I've let go or I've sacrificed about myself to be there.
Yeah, I think Eckhart Tolle, he said it really well. Like, life will give you exactly what you need for the best way of the evolution of your consciousness, or something along those lines. And I thought that was really beautiful. Like, when life throws something at you, like it's, I think Tony Robbins says, life's happening, for you, not to you. and
Yeah.
there's a lot of different versions of that, and that's a mindset. That's a way of thinking. That's that growth mindset as opposed to not growth mindset. And
I love that equation of life, which I use a lot on the stage, and that's E plus R equals O. So the E is the event, whatever the event might be, whether it's a relationship breakup, whether it's COVID right now. And the R is our response to the event. And then the O at the end equals the outcome. So basically, the power is in the response to this in this equation. So all the power's in the response. How we respond to the event creates our outcome.
And this is why I think, meditation is another. I know for me is another great tool, because it's meditation for me. Like I know there's a lot of misconception when it comes to meditation. People like you're sitting there like in this lotus position and like you're not thinking, like no thoughts come, unless if you were like Buddha or Jesus or whatever. Like that's not how the brain works. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're not supposed to get to a place of like, no thoughts. The whole point of it is recognizing and have the awareness of the thought coming in, and then not responding to that, and then allowing it to go away. So you're still having these thoughts. You're still gonna have thoughts. That's the way the mind works. It wants to think. It's supposed to think. That's what its job is. And it's not to have no thoughts. It's to allow the thought to come in. Not have any sort of response to it, or to have any sort of emotional response to it, or whatever, and not get caught by that thought, and then because that thought wants to take you down this rabbit hole of, you know what I mean? And then if that happens, that's fine. Like you could then have a thought, my life's crap, and then this has happened, or this girlfriend didn't like me, and all of a sudden you're going down this rabbit hole. 5 minutes later, you catch yourself, right? And you're like, I went down. Okay, cool. Back to. And then keep yourself, and then another thought will come. And I mean, it's not about not thinking; it's cutting down the time that you can catch yourself going down a rabbit hole, and then coming back. So the first time might be 5 minutes, right? You catch yourself, you're like, "Fuck, that was 5 minutes," and I didn't even realize. And then next time it might be 4.5 minutes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The thing is to, and I learned this through Vipassana. Anyone that's done Vipassana is amazing. I recommend it. It's 10 days silent meditation. 10.5 hours of meditation a day for 10 days straight. And there's no talking, there's no books, there's no stimulus. It's just you and and you definitely learn. And after 10 days of that, to be honest, it's very, very powerful. I highly recommend doing it. But yeah, you definitely learn. Like when it comes in, you just got to cut down that time from when you're catching it, and that's the whole point. And by the end of it, you'll see the thought coming in, and be able to then let it go without even going down the rabbit hole. And that's once you start getting to that point, you're like, wow, that was really powerful. But some days are going to be worse than the day before, and that's fine too. And be able to let that go, you know what I mean? There's a great book, David Hawkins, called Letting Go. I highly recommend everyone check that out too. And it's all about, a lot of times, everyone like, instead of forcing, like peace and love and all this into our life, if you can let go of all the negative stuff, like the hate and the guilt and the shame and all that, if you let go of all that, then all you can be left with is peace and love. It's all about letting go of the negative and letting go of the blocks to love and stuff, instead of trying to grasp these things and bring it in. If you're letting go of all the negative, then that's all you're left with is like the peace and love, which is real. I was like,
isn't that beautiful?
Wow, isn't that powerful?
Yeah,
right?
that's amazing. And that's where we all want to be.
Yeah,
that's the ultimate, isn't it? Love,
definitely. So any other tools that you can think of? Anything else that comes to mind when we
skipping?
All right. Let us know about your skipping.
Well, it's skipping down the beach like a little child, not the skipping with a rope. So I mean, although I do that too, but I just I skip on the stage and I say it's a double dose of dopamine. And the reason why I say that is because when you skip, you can't help but smile. It's unlike running, right? Angry face.
That's true. I didn't think of that.
So you skip and you kind of like, it brings out the child and you go, I remember, and it's kind of just light and fun. And when people see you skip, they laugh too, which is a good thing because that connects the community through dopamine. So that's how the double dopamine thing happens. So I say put a skip in your day and keep depression away.
Yeah, I love that. And there's a big thing on kindness with that as well. So just by watching someone else do something kind then evokes the same emotion in you as actually doing the act or having it done to you.
Beautiful.
So, when you're doing, and this is kind of like, I suppose this is a bit of a paradox here, but I do recommend people doing stuff kind for other people and not telling a single soul, because then you're doing it for the right reasons. A lot of times people do something kind and you're doing it as an ego thing, because then you can go, so look how kind I was, you know what I mean? So I do recommend, especially when it comes to kindness, like I practice kindness myself, and a lot of times I'll do it and not tell the person or not let anyone know. So then it really installs in you, like you actually doing it for the purpose of being kind, not for the recognition or not for whatever. But then there's the other flip to the coin is, sometimes it is good to then, show other people, not for the ego, but more for the inspiration and more for the, showing people that, and giving them the courage to then go out and be kind to other people as well. So there's definitely two sides to that one. But I love, it's definitely contagious. Laughing's contagious. Have you seen, there's a clip on Facebook or whatever, and there's a guy just sitting on a train, everyone's sort of like on their phones or whatever. He just starts laughing and he doesn't stop. And next minute, like after first people looking at him like, what's he laughing at? And then next minute, some other people start laughing at, and the next minute, and then the whole train is laughing by the end of it.
Beautiful.
And that just shows
so contagious.
How contagious it is. But and then there's the flip side of that too. There's the, someone's complaining, then what happens when someone complains? That triggers the pain body, or if Eckhart Tolle calls it the pain body or whatever, that triggers negative emotions in you, and then you start complaining about your life. You know what I mean?
And
so
then the energy just
all of a sudden everyone's complaining, right? In your workplace or whatever. So
increasing cortisol.
So that's something that you've got to be really conscious of is, the way that you're presenting yourself, affects your environment, and then how much your environment, is affecting you. Absolutely. And, to be that leader of change, to be that leader of, you want to change, your culture. And whose is it? Rami or Buddha or one of them said, if you want to change the world, then start by changing yourself, right?
Absolutely.
And that's,
so it's like Michael Jackson's Man in the Mirror, right?
Yeah.
So beautiful song. You're right. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
So come from love, not fear.
Yeah.
Simple.
Everyone go do that and you'll be sorted.
And start with a smile. If you can smile at one person everywhere you go, man, that's a beautiful gift. And it's free.
Yeah, and for some people that could be the only smile they got that day. So that's very powerful as well. So anyway, look, I think we've covered so much today, and thank you so much for coming along. Donna.
Man, it was awesome. Love it.
Yeah,
thank you.
No, all good. And so I just wanted to say I'm proud of what you're doing, and I know you're out there changing lives, and I know it's something that we're both very passionate about. So
I'm sure we'll see each other on the stage again.
I'm certain of that one. Thanks a lot for coming along, and we'll leave it there.
Yeah,
Thank
cool.
You. Bye.
Peace.
Thank you for listening to the Neuronirvana podcast. If you like what you heard, please like and subscribe. Also, if you'd like to know a bit more about us, jump on Instagram, Neuronirvana_ and Neuronirvana on Facebook. Also, if you'd like to check out our services and if we can help you in any way, jump on our website, neuronirvana.com.au.